Hi, I'm Dr. Stefana Pecher, the Country Duck. Welcome to our 9th edition of High Stakes, a series dedicated to educating the community and to helping heal the opioid crisis. Today, I'd like to welcome our wonderful panel member, Melissa Bouchard, Senior Cannabis Consultant and Educator. Thank you for coming down and taking the time. And we have a very special guest with us today, Lisa Cote Johns, who is a dear friend of mine, but she's also the co-founder of Community Speaks Out. And so welcome, Lisa, really, thank you for coming.
You're welcome. Thank you for having me.
Wonderful. So why don't we start, tell us a little bit about yourself and what led you to the point you're at now in things.
Okay, so the opioid crisis is a true crisis at this point. But I got involved because my son struggled with addiction. And unfortunately, he died from an accidental overdose in October of 2014. So there's a lot running through my mind and a lot that has happened, and watching him struggle all those years. And then meeting certain people. So
you told me about almost a spiritual experience that you had where you came to a crossroads. Would you be comfortable sharing that a little bit with us?
I would. Do you want me to tell you how my son got started?
Yeah, tell us the whole story.
Okay, so my son was a very smart little boy. When he was 4 years old, he was multiplying. And when he was in kindergarten, he would go to kindergarten in the morning and then second grade in the afternoon. He was truly gifted. And he always made high honors all through middle school, but it came easy for him. And he was very funny, a goofball, and he made high honors throughout high school as well, until his junior year of high school. Towards the end of junior year, he ended up having appendicitis. And when you have appendicitis, obviously you have to have surgery, and you have the fentanyl and all those opiate medications. And so he was in the hospital for a while, and upon leaving, I was given a prescription for OxyContin. He was only 17 at the time. And that was back in 1997, and that's when the opiates were considered a pain management miracle. Yeah. So if you don't have to be in pain, just take this pill. Well, they didn't tell you that it was addictive. They didn't give you the side effects. They didn't tell you there were withdrawals. They actually lied and said that it was non-addictive. So when I was given this medication, I had no idea what it was, antibiotic. I didn't know. So for 10 days, I gave that to my son every 4 hours like clockwork. But he had already had opiates intravenously for 6, 7 days prior. So now I'm giving them to him as well. And I'm just like, you have to finish your medication. You just have to. You're supposed to finish your medication.
Doing what you were told.
Right. So preparing for him to go to school once he's finished his medication, because it obviously made him tired. All he did was sleep. And like a day and a half, he didn't have any. And getting up for school on a Monday morning, and he was actually curled up in a ball on the bathroom floor.
Withdrawal.
I didn't know what that was. I didn't know until...
How could you know? You couldn't know that.
So I originally thought that, he had either an infection or broke his stitches or something. So I rushed him to the hospital, and they did a CAT scan and blood work. And they said there's no infection. Everything looks like it's healing. He's just healing slow. So they gave me more OxyContin. So lo and behold, he was home from school for almost a month. And after that next 10 days, he was just sick. And it took a while. And he ended up back in school, not himself. Certainly was not himself. He stopped playing all sports. And he played basketball, football, track, baseball, all of it. He did everything. He was very active in sports. And then through the summertime, he still didn't get back into sports when his senior year started, and that wasn't him. He was very active. It changed my child, and so senior year, here comes homecoming, October, and so all the kids party after the dance. They went to a bonfire, and one of his friends was really drunk and went to throw a log in the fire and overthrew it, and it hit my son in the face. So it broke his nose, and he didn't come home that night because he was afraid he was going to get in trouble. So in the morning when he came in, his eyes were swollen shut. His nose was terribly broken. He had bone fractures, and so surgery, again, a couple days in the hospital, again with the opiates, and they sent me home with medication for him, and I gave it to him, and he missed a lot of school. And when he was done, again, he was sick, and I took him back to the doctors, and they said, everything's healing fine, here's more OxyContin. And so basically, I turned my son into a drug addict. I didn't even know. I had no idea.
You can't blame yourself.
I know, but essentially, back in that day, when parents did this for their children, when you go to the dentist and you have your wisdom teeth pulled, parents gave it to their kids. They didn't know.
This is a failure of the medical system, not a parental failure.
Correct, but the pharmaceuticals didn't actually explain it to the doctors either. So everybody can blame everybody else, but in hindsight, now we have this generation to where we have this crisis because, and a lot of them are in their late 20s and 30s, and that's in their early part of their 40s, and that's the generation that where this new pain scale was given, and if you're in pain, take a pill. So anyway, to make a long story short, he didn't do too well in high school, and started college and discovered while he was in college, if he took a pill, because they were everywhere, he wouldn't feel sick anymore. And it just grew from there, and the pills are expensive, and the next best thing is heroin. It's the same exact thing. Tylenol 3, Vicodin, Percocet, OxyContin, they're all opiates. Just of a lighter, it's not as strong.
Yeah.
And so the more you take, the more you need. And it led down a really bad path. My once brilliant child, who could have been anything he wanted, ended up with the demon of addiction. And it ruled his world, and it made him sad. In and out of rehabs and detoxes how many times, and the depression set in, and he was sober for quite some time and had the beautiful girlfriend and the little house down by the beach and a puppy and all of that. And he was sober for quite a while, and then ended up passing out at work one night, and they took him by ambulance, and from there, the hospital gave him benzodiazepine, which is highly addictive, and that just led him down a relapse, which eventually took his life. And I lost my son in a sober house.
So in a place where the addict goes to become sober and is supposed to be a supposedly safe place for them, that's where he overdosed?
Yeah.
And tragically passed away?
Yes.
So, we're going to get to that a little bit later about sober houses, because you've done a significant amount of work in that direction and actually have worked hard to change some laws here in Connecticut. But tell us a little bit more about how you came to be part of Community Speaks Out and the co-founder. And
Okay. So after losing your child, your world is different. You don't have clarity. I mean, you're in a fog. And I was deeply depressed, like most parents are when they lose a child. And I found myself not wanting to live. And I was driving in my car one day, and I said, God, you have to do something. I don't want to be here anymore, and I wouldn't care if I met my child up in heaven. And I was just driving, and I said, please, God, help me. And the next thing you know, I felt this message, like, you have to do something then. There's something for you to do. And it wasn't long where a friend of mine, Ken, who actually is the one that I called to kick the door down to find my son dead in that house, he took me to a meeting in Westerly to meet some ladies for Shine a Light on Heroin. And there were two particular girls sitting at the table, and one was Tammy Dela Cruz and Linda Lab, both sons who struggled with addiction. But I had lost mine, and Ken knew that we would connect. And so we did, and Tammy called me like the next day and told me, we had conversations about how her son and Linda's son struggled, and how Tammy's son Joey actually spoke at NFA. He was a young guy still, graduated from NFA. He was a baseball star. He played with Matt Harvey in high school, hoping to get picked up, but unfortunately, the devil of addiction, those pills caught up with him. He got treatment, and he was brave enough to say, listen, kids, he spoke in the gymnasium with over 200, 300 kids, telling them this is what this could lead to. I lost my baseball career because of these pills. And so he decided that he wasn't going to be ashamed. He wanted to shout it out. And it took a lot of bravery for him to say to those kids, this is what happened. And so after Tammy and Joe and Joey went home, Tammy's like, we have to do more. Let's erase the stigma. Let's educate. And it was just a few months after that I met them. And Shine a Light on Heroin asked for us to speak at their events, and the next thing you know, we're all getting phone calls. Hey, can you help us? Can you help us? And it just turned into this beautiful nonprofit where next thing you know, we're helping people, with interventions, finding detoxes and programs for them to get into, and sober living, support group meetings, all of it. We do educational forums. I helped to write a curriculum for middle school, which I actually, we speak at all the schools, many schools, and I actually traveled down to Florida and spoke at a couple rehabs down there with a former New York Giants Super Bowl champion, Bobby Johnson, who's been in recovery for 16 years. So he somehow met him, and we connected, and then he came up here, and we spoke at rehabs here, and we went to the prisons and spoke there, just to give light and hope, and to let everybody know that, don't be ashamed of yourself. Be proud of yourself. Look at you're in recovery. We will help you. You're not alone. So long as someone's breathing, there's always hope, and you got to let them know they're not by themselves.
Can we actually let folks know? Do you have some resources that you could let folks know that are maybe watching, that are kind of facing some stigmas right now, that maybe they can't talk to their family about, or don't know where to turn to, or want to go to a support group? Are there?
So our support group meetings are the third Wednesday of every month at the Groton Public Library. It starts at 6 o'clock, ends at 8, but we're usually there until the lights turn off. We have guest speakers there all the time, people in recovery. It's not like an NA or an AA. It's support for families, because addiction is just not for the person suffering.
Mm-hmm.
It's a family disease.
Yeah, people need to know the signs too. And what about if there's somebody, we have addiction hits everybody, so sometimes it's a doctor that or a law enforcement person, or just a kid who's scared, who doesn't know how to talk to their parents. So what if they don't want to go to a meeting or be in a public setting? Is there somewhere that they can turn to, or a number that they can call?
Yeah, absolutely. So Community Speaks Out, we have a website, communityspeaksout.org. We also have a Facebook page, and our phone numbers are up there. Linda's, mine, and Tammy's.
So your personal?
Yeah, our personal phone numbers, yeah, absolutely. They can message us, anything they want.
I think there's a big sort of missing link in the rehabilitative services and sober houses and how many beds there are in insurance, red tape, and all these things. But certainly in the form of folks that are seeking recovery have to be actively using in order to get help. So a lot of folks will put themselves through detox and say, okay, I'm ready now, I'm ready, and then they can't get a bed and they relapse again. And a lot of times when they haven't had medicine in a few days or, had the drug in a few days, then that's when they overdose. So
Right.
I find that
It's a
interesting.
vicious circle. So I just had that experience 2 weeks ago. I had an older man, was an alcoholic, had relapsed, and then hadn't drank for like 4 months and was struggling. He wanted to get into a program. You can't get into a program unless you go to detox first, right? Unless you're put on the waiting list and you're waiting 4 months. Well, he had husky.
And remaining high that entire time.
Well, he
Have
was
to be
sober.
actively using. But in order to get,
So in order for him to get the help,
he had to get high again. He had to have it in his system.
he
Who
had
made that
to
rule?
drink.
It's
Is
crazy.
the insurance company or
Yes.
who?
It's the detox.
It's-
You
it's
can't.
It's the insurance?
Yes, it's the relationship. I believe it's the relationship between, in all my experience, the relationship between the insurance company and the detox place. Like, I just had a similar experience. A good friend of mine, using heroin, hiding it, not wanting her husband to know about it. To look at her, you wouldn't think anything. She's a
maintaining.
functioning addict, and started spending a lot of money every day, getting higher and higher and higher. I'm talking $160 a day to get her fix, even on dope, which is, you're using a lot at that point. And she just confessed this to me last week, actually. I had no idea. And so she's getting higher, and then all of a sudden her dealer started cutting it. And she wasn't, getting
she
high
needed
anymore.
more.
So she making call, but what he was cutting it with was fentanyl. So she wasn't getting her fix. She was getting sicker and kind of just sleeping it off. And then as soon as she would wake back up, she would be getting sick again. So it was just this vicious cycle. Long story short, she confessed to her husband, went to, the hospital. They turned her away. They couldn't find her a bed, and they turned her away. And she went back home. She got high again, and she just didn't know what to do. And she eventually drove
Wait a minute.
herself.
So wait a second. What hospital?
Miriam wasn't Kent.
She's up in Rhode Island.
I'm in Rhode Island.
Oh, okay.
Yeah, I'm in
so
Rhode Island.
Yeah.
But it doesn't matter. This happens all across the country. This isn't some,
Yeah.
poor white girl with good insurance. This happens everywhere. You know what I'm
It
trying to
does,
say? Like,
it
no,
does.
it really does. And in every population, and even more in the disenfranchised populations that don't have any insurance at all.
Right.
Sometimes they won't even let them be seen at the hospital. It's you think that you can go in the emergency room and receive treatment, but
It's not a
treat them
treatment
like it's not a
facility.
treatment facility, and they don't believe them. They don't meet the client where they're at, so they don't believe them. They think it's part of their drug-seeking behavior, and so they ship them out because they think that they're like, oh, I'm sick, or they think they're putting on an act. So anyway, they sent her home, and the long story short of that was she's continued to get high again, and it was in that time that she noticed the stuff that he was bringing her wasn't the same, and she took a photo of it, and she called the dealer out on it, and it was this whole thing like, I'm going to tell my husband I'm going to go get help, and he was like, no, I'll bring you whatever you... In essence, like, really could have killed her, and I by the grace of God, I don't know how she didn't overdose. But eventually it got so bad that the insurance company wouldn't find a bed for her, that she had to continue to stay high, drove herself to a treatment facility, and kind of just like threw herself at the place. You know what I mean? And thankfully, went back to had to take an ambulance ride back to the emergency room, create an emergency situation, all this additional cost and expenditure, just, why?
Jump through the hoops
To
so
jump
that
through
she
the hoops
could get
so
treatment.
they could send her directly from there.
She was lucky she found one.
And she's lucky to be alive. And there was one bed left, then one insurance bed left. And it's just crazy to me that someone can't say, okay, I've been detoxing for 2 days and I don't want to use again, and please help me. They're like, oh no, you have to go out and chance overdose again, chance risk death again, or non-sobriety,
This sounds
being
like
active.
some new laws need to be made. In kind of.
So basically what it is, you can't go to detox unless you have something in your system.
Because
right?
you're not technically detoxing.
You're not, if you have nothing in your system, you're not detoxing.
Well, it takes a long time though for these drugs to leave your system.
It does.
So technically, they're still in your system.
But if you test negative, then you are put on a list for a program. And those that are detoxing are higher on the list because obviously they're using at this point right now.
And
So
let's not forget, so many of these addicts have actively doctor shopped to find and drug seek to create their own, I'll get this pill from this doctor, this pill from that doctor, and they create their own toxic combinations
Yeah.
to get high. So let's not forget, you have to be actively using something that you're not prescribed. So they could be abusing all these benzos, all these opiates, things that they're prescribed, but if it's not something that's not doctor prescribed, you're not considered an addict.
That is very,
it's a vicious cycle.
yeah, it looks like there's some remodeling needed.
We're trying.
So yeah, I always like to kind of plug, like, where can folks call or where can they turn
Yeah.
to in those dire moments of crisis intervention. It's kind of like do or die, literally. And it
It
just
is.
saddens me so much that I feel like if we don't do something, many of our people are going to die, and they're good people. They're not, drug addicts are not just criminals out in the street,
No.
or whatever the classic, all the
Doctors,
stigmas
lawyers,
that's on it. And
blue-collar
it
workers.
doesn't matter if they are. All those folks have been through, hell and back sometimes.
Yeah.
Well, that's why we do the show and we volunteer our time. And so, but you are volunteering your time exactly for what Melissa is saying. So if a family is in that emergency room and they face this kind of challenge, or the patient faces this challenge, are you saying that they could call you up or Facebook message you or one of your team members, Tammy or somebody, and say, can you guys help me out with this?
Okay, so Lawrence and Memorial and Yale New Haven now have what is called recovery coaches in the emergency room.
Okay.
So that's what I was, the two hospitals that are in Bacchus too.
She was like, oh, wait a minute.
No, so when you were telling me about Rhode Island, I'm like, oh no, they don't have recovery coaches. There are people there that can help them. And they take the time, if they overdose, they're brought there. The recovery coaches are there on hand. They're trained and they're certified. And they try to help them get into detox
Okay.
and programs. And they are given our card. Now, I'm not saying it's a miracle if you call me, I can get you right into detox and a program. No, I just help with the process and fight as hard as I possibly can to find bed. And usually I can find a detox. But if you call on a Friday night, come Saturday and Sunday, the weekends are difficult. They're packed. And usually Mondays are pretty hard, but at least you can get a partial intake over the phone for a detox. Every place is packed. I'm not saying we can miraculously find it, but we can hold your hand and do some of the hard work for you. Meet with your families, and we're not going to hang up on you. Absolutely not.
And then what do you think about sort of long-term treatment versus these 28, 30-day stays? What I've found also is that
I get frustrated.
folks just get kicked to the curb when they're not ready to go. And
They
it's
are.
like, I just feel like there's just this revolving door of, and then this broken system of, and I don't know how to fix it in terms of, of there's no follow-up, not a lot of follow-up treatment, aftercare, or just over-prescribing of other medicines like
Right. Yeah.
So, and sort of folks thrown to the wolves are told, well, now go to this agency, that agency, this agency. And unfortunately, they're thrown into a population that's sort of the not the best company to keep, not the folks that they need to be around during that time.
All right, so when you have somebody that's struggling with addiction and they take themselves into detox and into a program, or you have those that are coming out of prison, they don't have what they need when they get out to be successful. They don't have a safe place to live. They don't have the resources and support a lot of times from their families because of the situations that they have put themselves in. But they need to have a longer stay so they can build that trust back with their families, so that they can learn the coping mechanisms, so they can be taught, different types of therapies and counselings, get the training they need to write a resume, look for a job. Long-term treatment. You put these poor people that are addicted with the disease of addiction, and you tell them, okay, your 28 days, your 30 days is up. You put them out, and there's what's going to, we've been doing this over and over for years. They get in the rat wheel, they jump off, they get back in that rat. You're setting them up to fail.
That's why programs like, I'm sure you know the people from Aware Recovery Care.
Yes, I love that place.
That is the new paradigm. We
It
had
is.
them speaking, and it sounds like
Amazing.
that's exactly what is going to counteract this kind of nonsense of ping-ponging back and forth. They go into the home for a whole year,
Yep.
and now Blue Cross is paying for it.
Yes. So how do we get that type of treatment for those that have state insurance? We're not.
Yeah.
Isn't it cheaper for the state to do that than to have the mess and the public emergency?
And cheaper than prison.
Yeah.
By far.
Yeah, so wouldn't it be common sense for the state to do that?
I would think so. I just know on what my son went through. First, we had the private insurance, and then the state insurance. And if you have the private insurance and you're in the state of Connecticut, get out. Go to other programs that are longer term treatment programs that get to the core, that get to the therapies and the counseling and get into the psychiatric behaviors and help you stop that cycle. Get cognitive therapies and whatever else you're suffering from.
And then treatment programs that allow for you to go through treatment for like a full day and go home at night and learn the pressures of that and cleaning the house and functioning in society and working a job and keeping a plant alive. Like, these are things that folks skills that they need to learn.
There
in
are
order to
programs in other states that do that, but
Yeah.
you stay there. Like,
Yeah.
you have your chores, you have to do this by, and if you don't know how, they bring somebody in and teach you and show you how to do that. Build up your confidence.
Yeah, and I'm not talking about the sober living houses where
No, not that.
everybody has a job, right? One's a cook, one's a this, one's a that, one's a schemer, one's a liar, one's a sneak, one's watching guard while the other one gets high. Like, you know what I mean?
Yeah.
There are sober houses where I'm talking about like true mentorship programs where they, create, bonds where people start to feel empathy and love towards other people. And even if they don't have that towards themselves yet, they want better for the folks that are around them, which only naturally progresses their own growth, I think.
There's this one program that I like to send. It's in Utah. And one of the girls on our board of directors, her son, Matthew Beecher, he went there. And if he is doing absolutely amazing. He's now the administrative director. He's been sober over 3 years. I'm so proud of this young man. He comes home and it's just like looking at a miracle. You know what I mean? And that program is absolutely amazing. And I just wish we had something like that in every state, especially here in Connecticut. We need to look at that program.
What's
and
it called?
Bring Aqua Recovery
Aqua Recovery?
in Utah.
I think I spoke with that gentleman at one point.
I think you did.
Yes. Yes, he told me how it actually helps him immensely to help other addicts. That's kind of what is his motivating force in life.
He lives there now. He never came back. And so I got another young man over there. I think this past November it was. And he's doing amazing. And I think you know the family too.
Yeah.
And he's doing absolutely amazing there. And he doesn't want to come back either. And he wants to do the same thing. You have to cleanse. You can't just be put on this, okay, this is what you're doing on day one, this is what you're doing on day two. By 28, see you later. Now let's put you in a sober house that's not regulated. Let's put you in a home where you have to wonder where you're going to get your sheets and towels from. And, oh, geez, where am I going to get a toothbrush and toothpaste now? You walk into a home, they don't even have curtains on
All
the
the regular,
walls.
your brain isn't, you can detox in 72 hours, sure. But the fog and the stress and all the depression that comes, all the mental situations, the pressure of, okay, now I have to feel things and I'm hungry now. The food tastes funny. I mean, there's so much going on that stimulates folks after they get done. That 10, 14, 21 days into this treatment, I mean, they're barely like getting their bearings, never mind ready to hit the streets again. So I think there is something to be said for sending folks out of state and that it's okay to not come back.
Yeah.
That when you change people, places, and things, like if there's some cliche sayings, that's one that works. go ahead and get better and stay there, you know?
Yeah.
Quality time with the family over quantity sometimes, you know? Folks
Yeah.
kind of come back to that same situation and it bites them, you know,
Yeah.
quickly.
You know,
For those that can, and then there's a whole bunch of those that can't. And that's
So
where
many
we
more.
need to work with, you know, Community Speaks Out or Aware Recovery Care, fine, you know, institution for sure.
Yeah. We're just lacking. All the beds are full for those that that don't require the detox because they decided to detox at home. Now what?
The treatment isn't.
There aren't any treatment facilities willing to take you for that unless it's like a private insurance place that, you know, you detox someplace else and sure, come on in.
And sometimes
most
you
of
can
them-
go to like a dialectical behavioral therapy or a cognitive behavioral therapy program at like a mental hospital, like Butler, where I live, is one of them. You can go there, but a lot of the time, again, the wait for the bed, it's a day program, and you're lucky if it's a 5 to 10 day program. And half the time, there's so many issues going on within the group that it triggers your own personal issues, and it sets the stage for yet again another
A
relapse.
It sets you up to fail.
So yeah, I'd really like to find a way that rather than us continue to just talk about this gap that folks keep tripping on, is maybe really try to pool our resources together and create some legislature that's applicable to
Well,
what's going
it almost
on.
sounds like that it's antiquated, just like many other infrastructure things. And so somebody has to have the common sense come in and make decisions that are applicable, not from the 1800s.
Absolutely. But,
You know,
We're
yeah,
repeating
it's
ourselves.
broken and we need to fix it. And people are getting so sick of hearing it that now, like, uncles that like were like, oh, my niece would never, that they're like, she can go and whatever in a gutter for all I care because I raised you better. They're like, people are so frustrated. They love, you know what I mean? People are giving up because it's literally a revolving door and a cycle that
It's getting worse. So now we're not just worried about people using heroin. Now we have the fentanyl, carfentanil. We just got information the other day that Connecticut had carfentanil deaths.
oh my gosh.
is that elephant tranquilizer?
Yes.
And the fact of the matter, I find a lot of the older population is getting hooked. It's not the younger generation. It's because now these doctors are facing the stigma of, okay, shoot, we overprescribed, now we're under the radar, we're gonna have to pull back, we're not prescribing anymore, which is understandable, but there is a place for opioids in some treatment plans.
Yeah.
And what they're doing is, because of addiction, they're, you know, cutting everybody off. And so now those folks are going out and seeking street drugs and using, and we're really creating an epidemic of vast proportions. And it leads us back to that legislative change, or wondering, like, why is there the privatization of prison? Like, what pockets are these pharmaceutical companies lining? Like, why? Like, yeah, I feel like we're kind of bashing our head off the wall and not getting anywhere, and you have to wonder why, who's benefiting from it, because it's certainly not the general population.
Well, yeah, you just need someone who understands the backdrop and has the common sense and informed position. You know, I think we have someone like that in Connecticut.
Say names.
We have a few.
I think we've interviewed Jonathan Harris on this show in the past, and he seemed to have a pretty good grasp of things. And I understand that he's running for governor now,
Yeah.
and that would certainly be a helpful person.
I was rather impressed with his willingness to be so open, especially knowing that he was going to be coming out to run as governor. His willingness to just be so real and open and transparent and accessible, and
I
great to
see
hear.
Connecticut is so broken, and we have so many options that we can put forth. So I testified at the LOB last week, and it was to put forth a bill that's been already put forth. It passed the House and it's stalled in the Senate. To have sober homes registered. So they have to be at a higher standard if they're registered, because they have to pay taxes. Obviously, the register is a business, they have to pay the insurance, and they have to be brought to a higher standard because they have to follow health codes and things of that nature. But the cities would make out too, because they would get the money from the taxes. But it stalled because one reason being through Demas having to keep the data. and it was very expensive. So it keeps getting kicked back. So when I testified, obviously, I told him that my son died in a sober house. And so I started my conversation, and I thanked them for allowing me to testify, and I stood up and I said, I just want you to pay attention to my dress. And they looked at me like I had 4 eyes. And I said, well, the reason being is I just want to catch your attention first and foremost. This is the second time I'm wearing this dress. The first time was my son's funeral. So I just wanted to catch their attention that way.
Heavy.
Because I had something to say. And it came down to this. I knew the day before I found my son that he was going to die. I knew it, and I told 2 people. I told a girlfriend of mine, and I told one of our board of directors. He's a friend of mine, very dear friend, Ken Edwards. He was also friends with my son. And I told him that day as well. I said, something's wrong. And my son was to start a new job the very next day. Anyway, to make a long story short, my son didn't call me before his meeting, didn't call me after his meeting, didn't call me before he went to bed. And usually I would see him after work. I'd go have coffee with him on the porch or whatever have you. And we were very close, so I talked to him all the time. And so Ken just said, he's fine, just pick him up in the morning for his new job, just get there early. And in the morning I called Ken, I said, he's still not answering the phone. He said, just go there and go get him for work. His phone's probably dead, whatever. And I said, no, Ken, I'm gonna be calling you back in a little while, I know. And so when I got there to pick him up for his new job, I called Ken, I said, they're not answering the door. You have to come and kick the door down. Please get my son out of that house. So he did, and he came and ran into the house and shut the door behind him. He didn't want me to go in. He knew. And sure enough. And when I got the medical examiner's report several weeks later, my son had been dead for almost 16 hours in that house. No one checked on him.
Aren't they responsible in some way?
They're not. Anybody can own a house and throw mattresses all over the floors and say, this is a sober house. Anybody.
What do they get out of it?
$150 to $175 a week per person for rent. They're making a lot of money.
And who's paying that? The insurance?
No, I paid for my son. Ken helped pay. You have to self-pay. There are some homes that are through DEMIS, certified through DEMIS, and they get their basic needs, and the state will pay their basic needs, and I think it's up to 6 weeks, and they'll pay. But those homes, DEMIS comes and checks them out. These other flop houses where there's more flop houses than there are regulated homes. Those that, do register as a business, they pay their taxes and they pay their insurance. You know that they're doing it for the right reasons. But there are still no policies and procedures in place, anything like that. So when I finally got the medical examiner's report, and I knew when I was talking to Ken, it's probably around the time where my son relapsed, and he had been sober for almost 8 months. Almost 8 months. He was on his way to a program, and they gave his bed away. So we had no idea what we were going to do. So through a friend of a friend, they said, there's a bed open in a sober house. And so we said, okay, we'll put him there until a bed opens up in a program. One time relapse, and he was gone.
This is literally so similar to the story to my ex who passed in September.
Well, but they take the same dose that probably worked, and it's too much for their receptors that have toned it
Well, their
down.
tolerance drops. Their tolerance level drops, and they're thinking that,
Or they're or they're getting it with their roommate, and it's a different deal, or it's cut with different stuff that they're just not used to.
Yeah. So, had you had your bed check,
Yep.
knock on everybody's door, okay, we're leaving for the
You
meeting
could
in
have
20
Narcan'd
minutes.
You
somebody.
saved them.
They didn't have Narcan. See, community
You
speaks
don't
out.
leave for more than a half. You don't leave that population alone for more than 15 minutes to a hour. You don't. You just don't.
And especially if somebody's just
Ever.
new in that house, you make sure you check on them.
Not ever.
Always.
I can't tell you how many nights I sat. Hope they're breathing. Like you set an alarm and you check. If you want someone to get better, you have to be their advocate and make sure they're in a safe
Yep.
home, safe house. That's what they're
But
supposed
people
to
don't know these things and they think it's safe. So this is very good that we're, putting this out there so people learn.
Yeah.
I
So
didn't know all
If you're
this.
serious about getting help or getting your family member help, make sure that it's a regulated or be willing, rather
but
than
there aren't
invest
any
in-
regulated
Yeah, but
ones.
so send your child to Utah and tell them it's okay if you never come home, baby, and I'll spend 3 times as much if I have to, rather than keep doing this in broken. I mean, it's a broken home. You take a broken kid and put him in a broken home and think it's gonna fix everything. It's not.
So, Lisa, then you did some other things and you became certified, if I'm not wrong here.
No, so my big thing was, after I got the report and nobody checked on my child and it was a sober home, I thought he was safe. I'm like, what is going on here? Something has to happen. I had no idea you didn't have to register. I had no
Yeah, who
idea
would
you didn't
know?
have any type of certification. And unfortunately, I learned the hard way that it's a crapshoot where you put your child. And so, I don't know, Community Speaks Out has just grown so quickly, and we're doing everything that we can to educate ourselves, erase the stigma and get rid of the shame. And then when I was talking with Jeannie Milstein and Mike Passrow, mayor for New London, Jeannie's the New London Human Services Director, she was like, something has to change. So there was another death in New London in a sober house, and then another death in New London in a sober house. And guess what? Another person in the same house my son died
Oh my
in.
gosh.
So we had these deaths, and Jeannie's like, so I work with New London a lot, trying to help. I part of their opioid action team. And so Jeannie's like, we have to do something, we have to do something. So Massachusetts, it's called MASH, they certify their homes. It's a certification, and they have their own regulation, policies, best safety practices, and procedures that certify these homes so they're safe. And so Jeannie said, how about if we can get a grant and somehow get some of you in Community Speaks Out certified to, certify these homes. Mm-hmm. So she reached out to Bill Stanley at L&M, and Yale New Haven Hospital donated $5,000 to Community Speaks Out so we could get certified. So we were actually trained. A guy named Richard Winant came from Massachusetts and trained us. It was a 3-day process. And now I was able to, with Melissa Ford is one of our girls, Alan Selsterman, and Leanne Williams. The 4 of us are certified, trained to certify sober houses.
Fabulous.
And so we did our first training, invited all of New London, of homes that we knew, and reached out to Community of Hope. She wanted Annette Eldridge, she wanted her home certified, so she came to the first training. And I actually finished their second training and did their final inspection. So Terry Keaton from McCure, all her homes she's certified and trained and inspected, and they have their certifications on the wall. So now there's 5 and 78 safe beds right now.
That's
And
great.
So I'm going to be doing a few more, and then I'm going to be doing a second training, opened again to the rest of New London that didn't want to get their certification now, and open it up to the Norwich area. And we're going to do like an open house, come and see what this is, if this is what you're interested in, this is what you want to do. And then we'll put forth the training date, and then Melissa and I will do the first day training. It's hours of PowerPoint and things like that, and you have to have mission statements, and you have to make sure you're trained in Narcan, and you have Narcan. It's a
So
big
it takes
deal.
some work.
It does. It takes a
So-
lot of work, hours.
But basically, so right now it's on a voluntary basis. These
Yes.
sober houses can agree to do it or not agree to do it. So I think, is your thinking eventually they should all be doing this?
Yeah, so Massachusetts has it that way. But because Community Speaks Out's connected to 211, so we can put on our website and we can put on our Facebook page that, Community Speaks Out actually has certified these homes and put them at the top of the list.
Yes, so people know,
Recommended-
at least they know.
Certified through Community Speaks
Yes.
Out, through NAR standards.
Mm-hmm.
We go through the NAR standards and let them know that, you know what, there are going to be bed checks. We are going to make them responsible for going to meetings, different policies and procedures. And no, when you walk into this certified sober home, you're not going to have to scramble at Salvation Army or Catholic Charities for sheets and a pillow.
Bags in a
Toothbrush.
bucket. People feel more comfortable in the
Toothbrush.
streets. Can I ask? I'm not sure how long this program's been in place, but has there been any tracking of sort of like this sort of system versus the system that we had to follow folks long term to see if they go into a certified sober house?
We
if
just
they're
certified
more
them.
successful.
Oh,
Okay.
this is brand new, yeah.
Okay.
I
I'm
just-
interested to see sort of the recidivism rate versus.
Yep.
Maybe in Massachusetts,
Oh,
they have
oh,
the
I wonder if
maybe
historical
we could reach
data.
out.
Oh, I'm
and
sure
see.
they're an
Because I
affiliate.
feel like that anecdotal, just that information might sort of help encourage other sober houses.
Yeah, so when I testified at the LOB last week, Senator Cook, when I told her what I had done, I said, so the big thing is Demas feels that it would be a lot of waste of money to
track them.
register. Right. So then I was explaining to them that, how about a certification process then instead, where Demas doesn't have to be involved at all. We can track the data and do it just like Massachusetts. So hopefully we'll be writing a new bill, maybe making them be responsible to be certified.
Whether it's, I don't know if it's the Department of Human Services or Public Safety. I'm not sure who it falls under.
Well,
but
no-
you would think that, and it certainly isn't that difficult to create an Excel spreadsheet and track a small amount of information or create a database.
Well, it would
It's
be
not
huge if it
as-
went throughout the whole state. I mean, that would be huge. And then you'd have to have, like, I couldn't do it all by myself.
Sure, but,
you know what I mean? But to become an affiliate.
Positive that, Yale? There's a lot of colleges and doctors and
resources.
students and resources
Grants,
and grants
Lisa.
To get the funding.
and
Well, that's what I'm
internships
looking for.
and
That's
all
what
of those things, and folks in the community like myself that would get the training and do whatever they had to do to, it's frustrating to see something broken and have solutions and then not be able to implement them.
Well, that's hopefully, I have a lot of people on my side, Senator Blumenthal and Cook and Sumner, and they're
Well, it's
just,
frustrating for you. It's you know what I mean. It's you kind of know what has to be done, so to have to jump
Yeah.
through that
Well,
all
and-
that
and
tape is
it takes
frustrating.
years.
It's remarkable because you're also doing all of this on a voluntary basis. You're not getting paid. So honestly, I don't know how you're managing. Because this is a
it's really hard.
full-time job in
It is,
itself.
Yes. And then
right?
between doing the certifications and the inspections, we also do the interventions. And now I have, people that want to get into programs call us and say, okay, I need a detox and a rehab. And so I'm working with 3 people today. I'm waiting for the show to be over because I'm hoping to get someone placed tomorrow morning. So I'm just waiting. So
Well-
my fingers are crossed right now. So.
Well, thank you for all that you do because I can't imagine how hard it is or what it brings back for you or your reasons why and all of that stuff. But I can't imagine the amount of lives you saved or the time that you've given people back just in not having to struggle the way that you did. So it speaks volumes for you.
I just wished,
Someone told you.
well, I wish I had that so my son could be sitting here saying, I've been sober for 9 years or whatever have you.
Yeah, it's got to sting. I mean, obviously you want folks to get better, but every time you help someone else, I just wish I could have helped Joe.
It's so different the way it was treated 3 years ago versus now. Now we go into the schools and educate the kids. You have a voice, you have a choice. They want to give you Tylenol 3 for a toothache. Tell them no, you don't need it. And here's why. My son died because of pills.
Right.
And I don't want you to become that statistic. And so I got my certification as a drug and alcohol instructor as well. So I'm able to go into the schools and teach the health class. So I've written a curriculum for health class. So I go into the middle schools now.
Do you go into any other states beside, like, are you branched out anywhere besides Connecticut, or is that an option?
So I've done a couple speakings in Florida. I had gotten these brothers down into Florida into a really nice program. And when they were successful, I sent a lot more people into this particular program. And they reached out to me and said, asked me if I'd like to do a speaking down there. And that's when I was working with Bobby Johnson. He's a former New York Super Bowl champion. And so ESPN was doing a special on him. And I happened to see it on TV. It was an interview. And I'm like, oh my gosh, he's been in recovery 14 years. This was 2 years ago. I said, I got to talk to this guy.
So I don't know his whole story, but I do know I have a friend, Boo Williams, who works on curbing the opioid epidemic through medical cannabis, and he fights to try to break the stigmas in the NFL and talk about just the overprescribing of pharmaceutical medication in that specific profession, and how they just, they're creating addicts, but then again, there's no follow-up treatment, and they're concussed and in pain, and what are they, so I'd like to, we talked about he'd like to come on as well if we continue. So
I would like to meet him.
Bridge that gap.
That would be great.
We'll definitely combine that, because we know it's helpful. Medical cannabis is helpful not just for pain and anxiety and insomnia, but also for TBIs. There's increasing evidence for dementia, Alzheimer's, Parkinson's, on and on. So absolutely one of the things that we can look to for an alternative.
Because folks certainly need healing and can't suffer in pain, but it's about safe access, really. It's about what's not going to
what's not
going to
kill you.
Help us.
What's not going to kill you.
Yeah. So, hopefully, folks can get to the place where they don't need, they're not in pain, or they're not suffering from some symptom or part of mental illness that they don't need anything. But we certainly should have options for the folks that are, and it takes a lot of courage for folks that are in that spotlight to speak up and say enough's enough.
Yeah, so it was great. We had, I actually met Bobby down in Florida, and he asked me if I could help him do speakings, and I said sure. So during this, we collaborated with Michelle Beisner-Buck. She's a reporter for ESPN, to do his interview the same time I was going down to Florida, so we were able to connect. And so I actually trained him a little bit in the car as we're driving to the rehab. So he did his first speaking. I had done a commercial for this one particular program, and I got to sit in Coach Parcells' penthouse, and I went on location with ESPN when they did his last interview. Since then, he's come up here, and then he's coming back. He's going to be here June 13th and 14th to do a speaking with Chris Herron.
Well, keep me in the loop.
Yeah, maybe we can combine something.
Yes, I think that would be really important.
That'd be
great.
wonderful.
Tell him your friend Melissa says you need some more penthouse in your life, because you deserve it. No, I'm just saying. I mean,
Oh, goodness.
you're doing the good work. I mean, you might as well enjoy it, right?
Yeah.
That's something else that I've found. A lot of folks that do volunteer work, we do it from our heart, but it seems like there's never a chance for us all to come together and just enjoy where we're at, how far we've come sometimes, because the mountain just seems so huge. That sometimes it would be nice if we could have a retreat or a little rehab or a little getaway.
Oh, I'm ready.
Where we can, obviously we would still have the conversations like what we're having now, but it would be nice to maybe have a little getaway to decompress and pull our ideas in a way that's not.
I think that's a great idea.
You can do your
Yeah, perhaps we
on
can
my
use your retreat. Yeah, so we do what is it?
We need a retreat.
What's it called?
7-day retreat.
7-day healing.
Yeah.
Oh yeah.
Something to
We
be, something to be
need to do
considered
that.
is in the world of taking care of everyone else. Take
Well,
care of ourselves too.
that's a great idea, and I'll be happy to set that up.
All right, well.
Oh,
you've
we
heard
have it on TV. You can't take it back now.
That's okay. I don't want to take it back. You deserve
Could be
it.
someplace warm and sunny though.
Yeah, well, might have to wait till June. No, I'm kidding.
Well, we could figure something out. We'll rent a bus and take us
Rent
all
a
down
bus.
there.
Coupon has good deals, ladies. Like, well, we got.
We'll find something. But
But that goes for everybody. It's about self-care. It's, we
Yes.
can't just, all the work you do, all the volunteer, we have to take a day here or there
know.
for ourselves as well.
And we Tammy, Linda, and I keep telling each other self-care, practice self-care, and Linda's like, Lisa, you have to take care of yourself. Tammy's like, Lisa, and I tell the same thing to them, but we're all so busy. You know what I mean?
Giving the advice.
We give it to each other, but we don't.
It's just that.
You're just
what
too
do the air
busy.
people say? You have to put the oxygen mask on yourself first if you're gonna save anybody
Yeah, well,
else.
I take a deep breath.
Can't
and
forget
hold
to
it.
exhale. Is all I'm saying. Don't
don't know.
forget to exhale.
Yeah, so
We'll get there.
You really,
Yeah.
deserve to be honored.
No, don't say that. That's
Yes,
ridiculous.
all of you
Absolutely.
at Community Speaks Up, but you as well. And so you turned around this horrible situation, and you're now turned it into a positive thing, helping so many others.
Well, let's just hope there are more grassroots efforts. There's a couple more popping up. The more, the better. Tammy and Joe and Joey got the ball rolling, speaking at that first night at NFA, and then us 3 girls got together and said, listen, when we just started volunteering, it just grew into this, and we're like, oh no, this is too big now. We have to make it a nonprofit. So
if anybody wants to sign up to volunteer, her
we need
number's on the
volunteers,
screen.
yes.
Or donate.
If you want to
Donation,
donate,
yes.
send her a letter saying thank you. You helped me this way.
Donations are big.
Didn't even know it.
We help, the people that we help. Sometimes, once they're finished with their program, they have to go into a sober house and they need help with their rent or something like that. We help to cover costs for certain things when we get our donations. We don't take a dime. We've never written a check to ourselves once, ever. It's all 100%. We have these recovery bags now. They're stuffed with all these things. Tammy has paint night on Mondays, where people come in and paint these little pictures to put into the recovery bag. So if they do find a place, they have words of inspiration, painted especially for them. People in recovery do it. Tammy does it every
Do you
Monday
take
night.
donations other than monetary, like pillows and blankets? And
We're looking for socks and deodorant and toothpaste and things like that. Tammy has the list, so
so the website. What's the website?
yep, go to communityspeaksout.org, and then you can go on Facebook. Community Speaks Out, and private message Tammy. She's I do a lot more with the sober homes. She does a lot more
Outreach
with that.
side.
So we each have our little space. So she does an amazing job. She's an amazing woman, that one there.
You guys are doing it right.
Thank you.
Yes, they are. Yes, they are. It's
Thank
an
you.
honor to know you.
Thank you so much.
Definitely.
So what are a few signs that family members can look for if they're not as versed as you in addiction? What are some things folks can look
So for opiates, when someone's smoking marijuana, their pupils get really big. But when someone's doing opiates, their pupils are very tiny, nodding off, sometimes sweating.
Nodding off, they're not just tired, I promise.
No, they're not tired. They're change in sleep patterns. They'll stay up at night to get high.
Right.
And they don't want to fall asleep because they like that feeling still asleep all day.
Because they want to be high at night and enjoy it and sleep when people can't see them.
Right, so it's their way of hiding. Yep. Do you see any pricks in their hands? Slurring of words? Change of friends?
That's a big one.
Quitting something that they absolutely loved? Grades? That sort of thing.
And they'll tell us, oh, it's just this, it's just that.
Yeah. Well, thanks for the tips, and that's very helpful for the audience. Good question too. Well, we're out of time, guys, but I just again want to express how grateful I am for your participation. Melissa, you're a trooper. Lois,
Thank
we,
you.
we
Nice to meet
reach
you,
out to you too after your fall and broken hip. We're sending you positive energy.
Yeah, we miss you, Lois.
Yep. And Julie Banks is in Florida helping the shooting victims and training in emotional freedom techniques. So we miss you too, Julie, but we'll be seeing you soon.
Yeah,
And
that's
Lisa,
worth missing you for.
Yeah. And Lisa, thank you.
You're welcome.
Really, you're an inspiring woman.
Thank you. Thank you very
And
much.
thank you to Community Speaks Out and Tammy and all of you guys there.
Thank you.
And you aren't alone.
No.
Yeah. Thank you very much.